Welcome back to A Moment in History. I'm 𝙎𝙬𝘽𝘎𝘾. The last years of the 1960s and the first of the 1970s were some of the most chaotic in Western history. With the Vietnam War still raging in the East, mankind made an unprecedented leap in technology and safely traveled to the moon for the first time in human history. All the while, a countercultural movement based on unhinged sexual expression and drug use was overtaking the West. This all took place during the presidential administration of a capable but ultimately doomed Republican leader whose accomplishments in the Oval Office were quickly overshadowed by the scandal that drove him from it. He was the 37th President of the United States, Richard Nixon. Nixon was born in 1913 and he studied law as a young man, married in 1940, just before he entered the United States Navy to serve in the Pacific Theater during the Second World War. Now, Nixon was a native Californian and he entered politics representing the Golden State after the war. He soon became a senator, and in the 1950s, he served as Republican vice president under Dwight D. Eisenhower. Now, Nixon was beloved in his own political faction, and following his boss's last term, he became the leading Republican in the 1960 election. Now, he came close to the White House, but ultimately lost to John F. Kennedy. Now, it's tough to come back from losing an election, but Nixon did it, first as governor of his home state and then in his revenge tour in the 1968 election. This time, Nixon won over Democratic challenger Hubert Humphrey. Now, Nixon was a capable and competent commander-in-chief during his first term. He was able to quell the American involvement in the slogging Vietnam War while also providing some long-lost hope at peace through cordial meetings with two American adversaries, China and Russia. He also celebrated the famous Apollo 11 moon landing only 6 months after he took office. Now, had he served one term, he'd likely be remembered as a great president, but he won a second term, and it is his highly controversial second term that historians remember. Nixon became embroiled in the infamous Watergate scandal, in which Nixon and some of his team members were caught involved with illegally spying on the opposition during the 1972 campaign. There's much speculation here as to how involved Nixon was or what he knew, but with the looming probability of impeachment that likely would have resulted in his removal from office, Nixon voluntarily resigned only a year and a half into his second term. Still, he remained a trusted voice in politics in his later years, all the way until his death in 1994. Thanks so much for joining me once again for A Moment in History. For more historical content, subscribe and click that bell to get notifications for when our next Moment in History comes out. Until next time, I'm 𝙎𝙬𝘽𝘎𝘾.